All right, welcome folks. This is 27 Degrees, our angle on Google Workspace. My name is Troy, his name is Rowan, we're your hosts, and we're here to bring you all the latest updates, our go-to tips, and best insights as a Workspace partner working at SADA. And if you're a day one supporter of the show, today, the format's gonna look pretty familiar.
That's absolutely right. We're returning to our 3-segment format, and we will be starting the show with 3 incredible updates from Google. It's actually been a long time since we've covered some of the developments, and of course, every day, every week, every month, there's new exciting developments to unpack. So we'll be starting off with 3 incredible updates for you.
And then we're joined by our friend Chad Pierce from SADA customer WeWork to share their story about how they transitioned over 5,000 employees from Zoom to Meet in only 16 days. Lastly, at the end of the show, we're going to be closing it out with a special look into the future. Buckle up, it's going to be a fun one.
So the first update that we have to share with you today is one for the incredible video calling platform within Google Workspace, Google Meet. And this is actually an extension of some existing tools that Google have provided to allow you to control your environment better. So we already have things like background replace and even background blur as well, which helps to obscure some information maybe that you don't want to see in the background or distractions. But now Google have extended this even further. And now we have the fun option of allowing for video backgrounds too. Google have actually only released 3 options so far. And I think those are a party, a classroom, and a forest. So I'm really excited to see how Google continue to develop this feature.
I don't know, I'm still coming around to this video background feature. I don't really see a use for it in like the corporate or enterprise world. Maybe that's just because I've only really looked at the 3 options that have come standard with this update. I am excited to see where this is going to go and how people are going to customize this, because I know that, I've seen examples of Giphy or Jiffy, whichever side of the fence you sit on that debate.
Giphy.
Coming out with various custom videos that you can use as your background. And I think that we saw corporate go with like static images with logos on them for Meet calls. I'm wondering if maybe we'll see some subtle moving backgrounds with a corporate image on them now as well. It is interesting to see where this is going to go. It's
always the case with Google that they release something and then the community does something incredible in a way that's often unexpected. So really looking forward to seeing how that one develops, and it's definitely Giphy to clarify. And I know I'm incorrect. On to number 2. This one, instead of for Google Meet, is for Google Chat this time. We actually announced this feature on an earlier episode of the show.
This one is around suggesting chats based on calendar events that are one-to-one meetings. So 10 minutes before a calendar event with you and one other participant only, there'll be a chat suggested between you where you can update them maybe if you're running over your last meeting perhaps, and also 10 minutes after as well, it'll be suggested automatically for you.
Google have taken that idea with the one-to-one calls and now extended it and opened it into multiple calls or larger calls where there's more participants than just 2.
We covered this in episode 2, and we looked at this becoming Google maybe nudging their users to use the technology and adopt it in the way that they see it being the most efficient and the best use of that tech. Personally, this hits closer to home for me. I have way more meetings with groups, and I'm meeting with teams at my accounts, not just individuals. This one should increase the usage of that update, and excited to see it.
So lastly, we have finally one incredible new update again for Google Meet. We have the functionality now of hand raising in Google Meet, which is wonderful for a number of different reasons. It allows you essentially to suggest that you'd like to speak, but without interrupting the verbal flow of the conversation in a Meet call. Incredibly helpful, but also really helpful in the sense of inclusivity. The idea that it's a bit less effort or less disruption to raise your hand rather than start speaking. Some people might feel a little intimidated. Lots of little incremental elements here to improve the hand raising experience. And those would be, for example, a noise indication that someone's raised their hand, so that maybe if someone's speaking and they're not looking at the screen, they understand that someone would like to speak. Also, the hand raises are queued up in a list, so if there's multiple people that have raised their hand, then you can see who is ready to speak and that sort of list. And equally, also very helpful from that is that once you start speaking, if you've raised your hand, Google disappears the hand.
We talked about this in our last episode that we released just 2 weeks ago on education with Drew Seidel. The way Drew was speaking about it for education, it just makes total sense for that sector. I think they're going to see a lot of value from raising hand in the classroom setting. Where we're going to see this really effective in the corporate and enterprise world is with large group meetings or even training and onboarding. I can't think of a better way for a new employee at a company to feel more comfortable engaging in a meeting and not stepping on anyone's toes or interrupting someone. Thanks for sharing those updates with us, Rowan. We've got a huge list on the roadmap from Google that we're going to work through each episode for you, and we're going to continue to bring these updates and really give you our angle on them and not just, regurgitate the information that you've already seen out there. We're now going to move over to our conversation with Chad Pierce from WeWork. Chad joined the show to share a little bit about their journey from Zoom to Meet and also share WeWork's perspective on the future of work. That's a subject we're going to get into later on in the third segment of the show. Stay tuned. Our next guest joins us from SADA and Google Workspace customer WeWork in New York City. Starting as IT infrastructure manager in 2016, Chad has held numerous positions over the last 5.5 years, including Director of Technology Services, Head of Technical Operations and Strategy, Head of Building Technology, and now holds the position of Global Head of Architecture and Solutions. We are pleased to welcome Chad Pierce to 27 Degrees. Welcome, how are you?
Good, thanks Troy. Thanks Rowan, nice to have me.
Thanks, Chad. We're absolutely delighted to have you on and looking forward to hearing all about your and WeWork's story with Google. And of course, WeWork are highly involved in building and designing their vision of the future of work, and we want to get into that later on. But maybe before we do so, we can understand a bit about how you started with some of the Google Workspace tools, and you've been using the tools for so long that you've seen this evolution and development over time from Google. So we'd love to hear more about how you started out with some of the tools and how you've seen that evolution over time as well.
Before coming to WeWork, I had used Google Workspace as a personal tool for my Gmail, and was actually really excited when I came to WeWork to find that it was being used as a corporate standard. It was fairly new at the time. I think there were only several major corporate companies that were doing it at the time, and we were a small startup when I joined in 2016. And seeing the evolution of how we grew from then to where we are now with the amount of people we have on board, it was awesome to see how Google actually followed the progression of us. So we started as basically a email and collaboration tool with sheets and docs and slides, and slowly saw more and more being adapted. We were a Hangouts user for a very, very long time, and then saw that progress into what it is now with Meet. And it was almost like a progression of maturity from the platform as a personal use case, educational platform to a corporate standard. Actually at one point, we made the transition from Adobe to Slides as a corporate platform. That was a huge effort actually at the time when I was running the corporate service desk. We took a look at it with having well over 5,000 employees on multiple locations around the globe, and we were issuing out individual Adobe licenses, which essentially was driving a Ferrari to the train station. It was a little bit overkill for what you had to use it for. It was essentially just to edit PDFs to make posters, as we do a lot of our signage for our members for things like upcoming events, this elevator's out for service, those type of things, cleaning's happening. So we took a kind of step back and looked at it and realized that not only was the license, it was Adobe overkill for what we were asking the team members to do, it was also kind of a limiting factor on some of the high-res files that we'd like to do. So it was very standardized and templatized, which was good, but also kind of limiting. So we met with our Google Account Partner Manager at the time and looked at how we could adapt some of the tools we had in-house, being a full workspace shop. And we were able to translate a lot of our PDF templates over to the Slides platform. So it was a huge win. I think it was somewhere over like $1.2 million savings, an annual savings for the licensing aspect.
This is something that at SADA we help organizations with all the time in that sort of effort to consolidate technology for hard cost benefits, but also for other reasons too. So for example, in Gmail, you can access the Google Chat and Google Meet services and Calendar and Keep and Contacts, and it's all connected together. So the more tools you use, the more benefit that you get.
From SADA's perspective on change management, I think it sounds like you were already pulling on the right strings to make that transition smooth. And the analogy of driving a Ferrari to the train station makes me laugh, because it's exactly what we see a lot of the time when customers come to us. They want to replace these sort of luxury software as a service items that they have, and they're looking for a solution with the tools that already come with Workspace to replace that. That leads us into sort of your involvement working with SADA really well. I know there was a transition to Meet that took place at WeWork, and SADA was involved in that. Could you just speak to sort of the partnership that you've had with SADA a little bit and how we helped you out with that transition?
Yeah, no, it was a very large order to take. We made a financial decision at the end of our previous contract with our previous video conferencing platform, and like I said before, when I initially came on, we did have Hangouts, and candidly, it wasn't what I would call an enterprise video platform at the time. This was back in 2016, maybe early 2017, and there was discussions about making it more of an enterprise tool along with chat, and that was in the infancy stages. At the time, we were in a hyper growth mode, and we were unable to essentially wait for that to happen. So we made a decision to go with a video platform that could provide us enterprise solutions. Fast forward 3 years later, we did the evaluation, and to your point a little earlier, take a look at what the tools you have already, and realistically, we had duplicative licenses. What are we trying to solve for from the requirements standpoint? We're looking to solve for external video conferencing and ability to hold and share meetings. I have to give credit where credit's due. The Google team has been very active in adding those feature functionalities and taking our feedback and actually adding it into the roadmap. So it's been great to partner with them on that. Yeah, we made the change over to Meet, and it's been a fairly successful migration. There's of course the user behaviors you have to change, and some of the familiarity. Going from an app-based platform to a web platform is a change, but I think the key here is continue to communicate out the updates and the benefits of going to a tool that you have already in your portfolio. I do agree. In the last year, you've seen essentially gasoline on the fire of getting things done for remote work, and we've seen the same type of acceleration here at WeWork.
I have to say, Chad, I think you're being a little bit modest. You didn't mention that you did that transition to Meet in a matter of 2.5 weeks.
We were doing a review today, and someone actually confirmed it was actually 16 days from the day we made the decision that we were making. So it was roughly 5,000 people in 16 days. By all no means I can take all of the credit. It was a collaboration amongst our teams across the globe and our different disciplines. It was again 5,000 users, the 85 rooms in a matter of 16 weeks. And the key focus there was the training and the transition period between the two, and then the continued documentation of what the platform can and will do.
And I think that's a factor within all of the Google tools. They try and make them easily usable, but also including helpful features, that help people work more efficiently as well.
The intuitiveness helped. It wasn't very difficult to drill down and understand how do you share, how do you end a call, start a call. Via Workspace shop, we it's intuitive to add Google Meet to a calendar invite. One of the improved functionalities, we were able to do it directly from the mobile, which was something we didn't have with the previous platform. So that was actually an added benefit right off the bat, which was kind of cool.
One of the things that's really exciting that Google are introducing, and we've seen demonstrated, is the ability to bring a Meet call into a file that you're collaborating on, like a doc sheet or a slide. So to be able to see and hear the people you're working on within one pane, incredible capability. And I think maybe as we transition into chatting about the vision for the future of work and how WeWork are designing that, or your vision for that, I think that's one of the things that Google are certainly doing with their technology to try and set the future of work, in the sense that it doesn't matter if you're in the office, working from home, or anywhere with an internet connection at any time, you can be connected and have an equally collaborative experience with your teammates.
Yeah, and I think that's, for us, it's a very exciting time for what the future of work looks like. No one had guessed a year and a half ago we'd be where we are now, and realistically, if we were poised for a a resurgence in the current environment. What I mean by that is, with our a footprint of locations across the globe and multiple ones within large scale city locations, metro areas, we're seeing a lot more of the ability to allow our members to come back to work in a more comfortable fashion into a flexible working space, which allows them to maybe not go to their central location, but go to a WeWork location close to their office. As the large scale companies have allowed their employees to work more flexibly across the U.S. You could work from a location in Oakland, or you can work from a location in San Francisco. New York, you can work from Queens, or you can work from Manhattan. It's really whatever's closest to your neighborhood, and we've seen that be a huge driving factor in how how large corporations and even small ones are coming back to the office. And realistically, it is. I do believe personally that it's going to be something that changes the way, not to be corny, but how the way we work. It really is. It is going to be more of that model, I think, and it's exciting. It really, if you have to look at the silver linings, I think it's a silver lining of the last year and a half of how people are coming back to work and how it's going to be a benefit to maybe a work-life balance.
SADA ourselves, we're a hyper growth company right now, which is exciting and presents all sorts of unique challenges in that growth model. And we are a WeWork customer, and we know that WeWork will be part of our strategy moving forward for a hybrid work environment. Just quickly, Chad, I mean, you touched on sort of the shaping the future of work at WeWork. Where do you see Workspace fitting into that? I mean, obviously you're heavy users of it. So is there anything that you're looking forward to coming down the pike that you've seen on the roadmap?
I think I saw there was a study done by McKinsey or something, upwards of 50% of all meetings will have at least one or more end users on the opposite end that will not be in the room. And so that's a huge statistic to think about when you are planning space for people to come back to the office. If at least one person is going to be dialing in. We are actively updating our conference rooms to allow for members to join via video conferencing, Google Meet obviously being one of them, but also allowing for that screen sharing and collaboration, whether it be in slides, docs, sheets. We've tested out digital whiteboarding aspects. So those type of tools and collaboration tools are really going to be what I think differentiates how WeWork addresses the workplace of tomorrow, and how we're able to make it feel like a seamless transition back into the office, or for those who are working remotely or flexible, 2 days home and 1 day in kind of deal. I think it was brought out in Google I/O or the Google conference recently around the Project Starlight. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but we were fortunate enough to preview that, and I think that is something coming down the pike that is super exciting and a game changer. Something like that within our spaces that allows for what feels like an in-person meeting, I think could revolutionize the way people look at business travel. As much as I do love traveling, if I needed an in-person meeting, that was the coolest thing and next thing to sitting across from somebody. So it would be a testament to the partnership between WeWork and Google.
We'll look forward to a tour of the Toronto office when you come up, so we can take a look at how WeWork is handling that challenge in person. And who knows, maybe our viewers will get a chance to see some of that footage behind the scenes.
I'd love to do it. I'll take you up on it as soon as you're ready.
Chad, thanks so much for joining us for this conversation. We love telling customer stories, but it's always better to have the customer come on and tell them themselves. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us today, and we'll be speaking to you again soon, I'm sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I feel honored to be able to be part of a podcast like this and be able to talk to some of the experience we've had.
Absolutely sensational discussion there with Chad from WeWork. The ability for them to transition so many people from one video calling platform, Zoom, into Meet in such a short time period speaks to the usability of Meet and the efforts that the team put in, of course. But also, Chad mentioned there was a bit of trepidation and maybe the user base were a little concerned about the transition and if they would have the same features in Google Meet and Zoom. And I think it really speaks to Google Meet stepping up to the plate and developing and working closer to that parity between the two, that they were able to make that happen. And as a result, the user base has accepted the solution and now uses it freely with less concern.
Yeah, and it's always so much more valuable for a customer to come on to the show and share that story and to hear that directly from Chad about that process that WeWork went through. That's the gold. That's what we're after. So if you're a SADA customer and you'd like to come on 27 Degrees and share your story, and you felt like our partnership has been really valuable for you, please reach out. You can reach us at 27@sada.com, or you can reach out to your dedicated customer success manager and they'll get in touch with us. Now we're going to move into our special third segment where we have a look into the future of work. But first, a quick costume change.
Wow. Google Workspace is a fantastic platform, and one of the key reasons that makes it so excellent is that Google are constantly improving the features and developing new functionality to meet the needs of users. And we on the show have unpacked many of these new features, especially in our first segment where we review the latest updates. But we actually want to take that step further, and instead of looking at what's already in the platform, or even coming soon, we want to show you over a long term what Google's vision is for the future of work. We also want to touch upon some of the new functionality coming down the road and really Google's idea for what work can become. Isn't that right, Troy?
I am Taro Troy, here to predict the future of work.
I see a world where companies can hire the best candidate for the role. No matter location, no matter language, everyone will work together in harmony. Am I right?
Absolutely. It's funny you say that because I think there are some organizations for a long time who have been hiring globally, but what we see from Google and some of the changes in the way that we work, especially in the last 12 to 18 months, is that there's a lot more opportunities, and almost every organization now can have access to a global workforce. But now there are even new functionalities coming down the road which will help. For example, the more connected experience in Google Meet, allowing you to bring Meet into a doc sheet or a slide, picture in picture, creates a much more connected experience for people. And also things like language translation, which is built into Gmail and has been for some time, but also coming soon, very excitingly, is closed captions in Google Meet, which are translated too in different languages. So you'll be able to have a multi-language conversation without having to learn any of those languages. The global workforce idea has been there for a while and some companies have adopted it, but Google's technology that they're taking here and the path they're choosing is really going to open up possibilities for a lot more companies.
So I was right.
You're correct, you were. What else do you have to predict for us, Troy?
Let me look. In the future of work, I see individuals empowered to work the way they want, by their own schedule, not the schedule their company puts on them. Am I right?
That's right. Yeah, again, you seem to have very good prediction skills. Actually, speaking of some of the changes that came out of the pandemic, I think, again, this is one that we saw greatly. So the idea that before the pandemic, the majority of the workforce would be in the office physically, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, quite a fixed schedule. But the instant transition into working from home suddenly moved a lot of that responsibility onto the individual. It's a shift we've seen over time. Before the pandemic hit, but this has only accelerated it. Google is also developing functionality to support this idea in the future too. For example, one of the features or tools that we've covered on the show is the Time Insights report. The ability to see from Google Calendar the types of meetings that you're scheduling in and a breakdown of your work activity. And that's only accessible to you as an individual user. There's no manager or admin oversight to get involved. Throughout all of the Workspace tools, there's the core tenet of empowering the end user instead of the admin. But this idea of the end user being able to set the parameters of how they work, I think is fantastic and something we're only going to see more and more.
Right again! I also see for those same employees the ability to work from any device and have the same ability to impact their organization. Am I right?
3 out of 3 so far. The ability, as I mentioned before, to collaborate from any device, any location, at any time has been possible in Workspace since its creation and one of the core tenets of it. And that's why I think that Google have had this vision of a flexible, hybrid working style from the start. Google are focusing really on bringing the same collaboration possibilities and experience, no matter whether you're in person collaborating with people or you're working remotely.
I have a fourth prediction. The vision is coming to me. I envision parents being able to set their schedule so they can spend time with their children and eat dinner with their families. Am I right?
4 out of 4. Well done. This is, again, a really interesting idea. I think ties in very closely to the concept I was mentioning earlier of empowering the end user to be able to set the parameters of how they'd like to work. There's a focus from Google on flexibility in work, into more of a design the work for what you need to do appropriately for the task in hand. So for example, some of the ways that we see this in the technology are from the setting of different custom working hours on different days. Google have extended the great capability of working hours, which before was just Monday to Friday. You could set one block of time that you were available, but now you can actually set several blocks throughout the day. And also I think things like setting of custom chat statuses as well, so being able to show the people that you're working with and allow them to get a better expectation of when you're available and what activity you're up to, I think would be fantastic. And something we'd really like to see coming down the line, maybe a bit of a feature request from me, would be the ability to see if someone's active in a Google Meet call in the chat status. I think this would be great in a number of senses, but mostly because it wouldn't require any interaction from the user themselves. It'd be done in the background and would fit very much in this theme of allowing the end employee to create the work schedule in a flexible way that suits what they need to do. And only they know best how to do that. The future of work seems very bright from where I'm sitting, for sure.
Troy approves. Thank you for having me. Well, that's it for another episode of 27 Degrees, folks. Thanks for tuning in. We are so appreciative to be joined by Chad from WeWork to share their customer story with us. We hope you had as much fun as we did looking into the future of work with Troy. To stay up to date on all the latest episodes of 27 Degrees, you can go over to Cloud Quarters at sada.com/cloudquarters or subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications. We can't wait to see you again in 2 weeks when we continue to bring you our angle on Google Workspace. But first, a quick costume change.
I don't know if this is what I need at the end of the day. I think we need more props from next time. I would like to see some like lamps, maybe like an orb.